Would anything change in our universe if the gravitational constant was a little stronger or a little weaker? So that calculation got done, particularly in the 1970s, by Barrow and Tipler, and the answer was astounding. That if you take any of these 15 constants and you tweak them just a tiny little bit, the whole thing doesn't work anymore. Take gravity, for instance. If gravity was just 1 part in about 10 billion weaker than it actually is, then after the Big Bang, there would be insufficient gravitational pull to result in the coalescence of stars and galaxies and planets and you and me. And you'd end up, therefore, with an infinitely expanding sterile universe. If gravity was just a tiny bit stronger, well, things would coalesce all right, but a little too soon. And the Big Bang would be followed after a while by a big crunch, and we would not have the chance to appear because the timing wouldn't be right.
If you have to have self-replication in order to have evolution, how do you get all this? How did that self-replication get there?
Yeah.
It couldn't have evolved because there's no evolution. And that's what I've been studying and what I published on recently. The fact that, in fact, as I assumed, using various models that I'm not going to get into, that there are thresholds. And if you don't start out with a cell that already is pretty good at accurate self-replication, you can't do it.
I came from China as an atheist. I believed nothing but science. I was studying the structure of eye in med school, and I realized that the human eye is so complicated. Trillions of cells has to line up perfectly for visual signal capturing and interpretation. If any one of those cells gets out of line, the person will be born blind. So I had a big problem, and the atheist me at the time, that how could so many cells form in such a short period of time out of randomness? So I kept on asking a professor, and he said, "Ming, what's a cross street?" I said, that's a car. He said, "What's the difference between a car and a human eye?" I said, "Human eye is a lot more complicated." He said, "Okay, can you imagine how a random piece of metal form itself into a car?" I said, "No way." And he said, "How about human eye?" So right there, he opened a window in my life, making me realize that it was formed with a specific purpose for vision. So there's a designer, a creator behind that. And I start with my journey believing first there's a creator, there's a God, and later on, more specifically, the God is in the form of Jesus Christ. And Christ has died for our sin so that we could have a chance for eternity.
Somehow just absorb the view that we are just gene machines, that there's just the material, and that's all that it means to be a human being, and that the purpose for our existence is really in passing on our genetic material to the next generation, and the important thing is that our genes survive and make it. Also, I mean, it wasn't until I arrived at university that they used to put catchy titles, the Christian Union, on the stairs going up to the dining hall, and I would see these, and I'd literally never seen these before. I'm like, who are these people that ask questions about life? Because it just hadn't been a feature of my schooling, my upbringing, certainly not the philosophical questions that you raised. That Christians believe certain things about the Bible, or and how to kind of reconcile that with belief in God, and of course recognize that Christians hold lots of different views on how they make sense of the opening verses of Genesis. But first and foremost, it's not a scientific textbook. It's not giving a scientific account. It is giving an account of things that actually happened, but not in a literal scientific way.
Christians, and actually all religions I was pretty antagonistic toward, were people who really didn't know their science, or didn't, or maybe they needed a crutch or something. I really didn't think they were that smart. Then I started to realize that many of such people were super smart, and they challenged me to read the best-selling book of all time, which is probably still the Bible, and the Hebrew and Old Testament and Christian New Testament. And as I was reading that to against my desires, I started to change my mind about some things. And then I thought, oh gosh, okay, if this book is influencing me to change my mind toward Christianity or toward belief in God, maybe I should study other world religions. So I started to do that. And as I started learning more and more about different world religions, meeting people from those religions and going to temples and mosques and others, I started to realize that not only did I have a lot to learn, but I was on a journey that was starting to make me not only believe in God even more, but as I got dragged off to some Christian churches, which I resisted in the beginning, and found some where I could ask questions, very important, I started to realize that the religion was not at all what I thought it was, and that there were some really interesting and very attractive elements that were very historically verified also.